As I was anticipating to some colleagues of yours that couldn't make it for today because they had other obligations, I will record the meeting. It should be already recording and transcript the meeting, and I will send you, as I did in the past, appointment with both networks. In any case, I will send you a report, a summary, so all the content will be shared in any case. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for finding the time and for making room in your agenda for this appointment. I am very happy to have you all here, and I'm very happy that in the end we managed to put the two networks together. As far as I understood, you already know each other almost, so no need for introductions, no need for too much detailing about this. In any case, if extra people, let's say people that are outside our networks, if they are joining, I will just go more in depth about the contents of relating to the two networks here in the presentation. So I will start sharing my screen just to give you a brief introduction about, let's say, the menu for today and how we count on working together. So, well, the idea is that today we try to work together on the topic of communication seen from the lens of how it can help build a legacy for your projects. So we've been discussing that in both networks, the idea that you are currently working on a specific action at local level, but that is an episode somehow, or this is one chapter of a longer book. So what we will do today will be on the one side I will try to frame what we mean or how we were imagining this relationship between communication and legacy together with Christos and with Fernando. Then there will be, I would say, I imagined a sort of a just not to make it too boring, I imagine that we might have a bit of a dynamic section. So there will be 6 questions to which both Alandria and Getafe will be answering to. I was coupling them two by two. So we will have a couple of questions and then an interactive session and then another couple of questions and then an interactive session and then finally the questions number 5 and 6 and then again the final interactive session with this idea of keeping the conversation going. We are around 12, 15 people today. So we will try to keep all the pieces together as more as we can. So talking about the workshop, why the workshop? The idea was actually growing in conversations held both with the Hydro-Heritage Cities and within the EmPowerIngUs network. We actually wanted to go a bit further let's say, going a bit beyond the concept of communication as, a dissemination activity, which is actually part of what URBACT requires, part of what both networks are working on. But the idea would be how can we use communication as a driver for continuity? So as I mentioned before, the single projects are, of course, very important because they allow you to bring about specific things, but single projects might remain isolated. So, and this might be an issue, this might be a problem. So how can we see single projects in a longer trajectory, which means that we need to have a strategy at the beginning, and we need to have a potential goal that we look at in the long term. And actually, we will try to reflect around this and reflect about how we can set up and frame our work in a way that is more in the perspective of using the communication strategically, and which means that we might define different ways to use our tools. We might need to organize communication differently with this idea of imagining, let's say, what we do in the near future, but also what we might be interested in doing in a farther future. In this sense, doing that together, we thought it would be much more interesting, and also because in both networks, in different ways, we are discussing about how to build long-term value for your projects, for your experiences. And this is actually part of the work you're all doing with the investment plan at these stages. So we thought that also the timing could be quite interesting. So where we start from, you know that better than I do, actually, but it was important in any case to underline that. So we start from two EUI, UIA innovative practices that were concluded so far. The one in Getafe that is related to energy poverty, and the one in Halandri that was related to cultural heritage and to cultural heritage related to water. So we have water and energy that are normally not so, I would say, common issues for urban policy or urban policy making or for engagement. So this is one of the connecting points of the two practices. And of course, the two practices were giving birth to two URBACT networks that are ongoing at the moment, but also a bit, I would say, facing the final phases of the delivery of the network. We have a total of 11 cities that are committed to these two topics. So that's why we thought it could be quite interesting to put you together. There are connections between the city already existing. You kind of know each other. You're all embedded in the URBACT environment, let's say. But besides these more generic reasons why it's good to be here together today, there are some elements that are quite interesting, that are quite justifying, I would say, that it makes sense to work together. So the first thing is that there is a strong alignment between the two networks, also because of the topics that you are bringing about. So in both cases, even if then the practices are different and the outputs are different, but in both cases there are new, fresh topics for the urban debate, energy poverty and water heritage, that are being introduced in the local debates, that are becoming policies, that are building new plans and perspective for the future, also in other cities here and there in Europe. And in both cases, in the case of both networks, you all have the necessity to deliver a long-term strategy. On the one side, this is part of the homework you received from URBACT. So you are producing an investment plan that is, pushing your glance beyond next August, let's say, but instead imagining what's happening next. In this sense, understanding how we might frame communication, or how we might use instrumentally, functionally communication beyond the homework, beyond the typical delivery we need to do for the URBACT program, is quite interesting. So the first point that came out within the conversation with Christos and with Fernando was this idea of communication as a strategic legacy tool. So we might see that as a long-term strategic asset. So we do not communicate today just by the sake of disseminate things, but we are seeding the ground. Anytime we do a communication action, we put seeds on the ground. Some of them might flourish, some others might not, but do take this into account. Through your communication actions, you reach someone every time, from time to time, you reach different targets. And if the communication is impactful, if the communication is effective, you are kind of making a small step to bring these people on board. Communication is a way to capitalize on project results. So it's not only a matter of telling what you're doing so far. We had the transnational meeting, we had the local meeting, we met journalists or whatever, but it's also a way to go back in the future on what you did. So a well-done communication today is helping you in 6 months, 1 year or more time to go back on what you did and also go back to the essence of the value that was generated locally. Communication is a tool to build networks with stakeholders. It's the beginning, of many activities that then might be evolving in participatory and engagement activities. But a good communication is also the very basic tool you have in your hands to start the relationship with the local system of stakeholder. And at the end, as we talk about legacy, it's a mechanism. Also, it can also be considered as quite a light kind of mechanism. It's less demanding than other things, in which you can use to enable continuity in the long term. As we a bit mentioned before, it's a complement to community engagement. So the experiences both cities were bringing about in the EUI, UIA practice are quite meaningful from this side. So community engagement and reaching out for people is also a matter of communication. And normally the initial effort of communication that both cities and both networks were doing were locally oriented. So we need, first of all, to say something to our local system of stakeholder about what we do, about what we would like to do, about the role we want them to take, about the outputs we have in mind, and so forth and so on. So communication helps building relationships, and a relational approach in the way we produce communication. So it's not simply I'm giving you the message, but maybe I'm giving you the message. I'm interested in your feedback. I'm interested in your comment. I'm interested in opening spaces for debate. It's very helpful to ground the project activities in real context. So you all work in territories that are made with different kind of audiences, different kind of targets. Some of them might be more proactive or reactive to what you do. Some others might be less interested or less easy to catch at the very beginning. But in this sense, communication and well-done communication, taking care of the different targets, languages, the way in which you translate the concepts, a good communication can really help also in strengthening the legitimacy and the visibility of what you do today, but also in producing accountability for the future. Then this is the most tricky part, because we have been discussing with all of you in different ways about the political impact and the relationship between what you do as a practice at local level, as practitioners, as people doing operational things, and the difficulty sometimes to make what you do understandable for politicians, but also I would say adoptable by politicians, because anytime a politician is adopting a specific practice, this might help the practice to evolve into something different, into something new, into making a UIA proposal become an URBACT network, and making the URBACT network and the UIA proposal become a locally ground policy in the long term. So not anymore the practice, the pilot, the experiment, but mainstreaming politically that specific practice. In your case, mainstreaming politically the debate about energy poverty, the mainstreaming politically the debate about water heritage and the importance of these two dimensions at local level. So in this sense, you all had experiences you can share. In some cases, they were positive experiences. In some others, they were negative experiences. We will take the chance also to talk a bit about that. I would say starting from the practice, starting from what you experiences, starting from what you learned from negative and positive experiences in terms of how to use communication also in the perspective of supporting policy uptake and implementation, which means, again, that the kind of communication that you are producing is different. When you have to communicate to local associations, you will use a language, you will use specific arguments, specific theses that you use to support your position, possibly when you will communicate to politicians, to city councillors, to those ones that are governing the city, you will set up a different kind of discourse. And being very aware about this is part of the game, I would say. And there's nothing bad in producing different storytelling and producing different narratives according to the individuals, the organizations, and the interlocutors more in general that you have in front of you. So again, building legacy through communication is part of the game. And it's, I would say, related to this thing I was mentioning before, that we build different narratives and we build different messages depending on who we have in front of us, and making the exercise, doing the exercise of asking yourself, how shall I present this to the mayor? How shall I present this to the Chamber of Commerce? How shall I present this to the committees that are against the project? It's an extremely interesting way to achieve a better understanding of what we are doing and how we make sense of things and how we would like things to evolve. In the two cases we will use as guinea pigs today. We have interesting stories in this sense. So the initial expectations you have on your projects are not necessarily the way in which then the projects will evolve, or are not necessarily representing the most important achievements that you will build on by the end of the project. So understanding how the projects were brought about, understanding in which way you can produce narratives about the different pathways that you were going through is extremely important, not only in terms of communication, but I would say it's mostly important in terms of the legacy that you want to build. Because this is helping you also clarifying which are the follow-up opportunities that you want to take. So taking the example of cultural hydrant that was made of many different ingredients. There were the public spaces, so the physical intervention. There was the work on the cultural heritage, on the intangible cultural heritage with the local communities. There was the work on producing a narrative about water. These different elements might be all interesting in terms of let's use them to get new opportunities in terms of funding, but they might also be like three different stories that come from the project and three different trajectories for local development that the municipality might be interested in taking. Okay, so in this sense, also becoming capable to disassemble what you're doing, and this you're already doing that in the investment plans. So understanding which are the policy frameworks to take care of, understanding which are the ways in which you want to operationalize your initial ideas, and understanding the phases and what can come first and what should necessarily come later because of funding, because of political agreement, because of many reasons that are conditioning your action is part of the game. So doing, I would say, an aware work on communication, becoming aware about what you communicate and how and to whom is also a way to fill the gap, in the capacity you have now in terms of exploiting the project and imagining how the project could be further. Could be nurturing further actions. So this is just to synthesize a bit how we were discussing the topic of communication with Christos and Fernando as we were preparing the joint workshop. But I would say more in general with the whole of you in the different appointments we had in presence and online during the last weeks. I wouldn't like to take more time on this, and I would pass to the first question. So I was anticipating to you before we prepared together also with Sandra and with Clemen, we were preparing, agreeing on 6 questions that could be quite interesting as a transversal way to explore both practices. So I was grouping the questions in group of 2. So we'll go through them, and each questions will be answered by both by Christos and by Fernando, giving the perspective of the 2 contexts and the 2 networks. After each couple of questions, I will ask you all to use your phones and help us a bit discussing. I prepared very general questions that I hope will help us stimulate the conversation with you, but I will ask you to type your answers so I can keep better memory of what you say, which doesn't mean that talking is prohibited, okay? So we can do both things. So the first 2 questions, and then I will leave the floor to Christos and Fernando in the order you prefer, my dear. So question number 1 is actually based on the previous experience produced within the UIA-EUI framework. So when you think back to the beginning of your EUI project, how did you imagine communication would work, and what it would help you achieve? So what was your initial framing of communication and the use you could make of it? And then question number 2 would be, was there a moment when you felt proud or frustrated about the communication actions that you pursued, or if there were moments that were really helping you to connect with people, communities, stakeholders, politicians? So let's keep this broad so far. So I don't know who feels like starting.
Christo.
Okay, Christos, then it's your turn.
Christos, yes.
So for both of you, you have a few minutes to answer each question. You can go through question number 1 and question number 2 together, Christos, if you want, and then we will pass to Fernando. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning from me to everyone. So I will start from when we implement our UIA project, because it was different from when we started our EUI network. So at that time, communication for us, it was mainly focused on a local level, because participation of citizens were very at the core of implementing the project from the beginning. So we wanted them in order to deliver the project. So attracting local people, making them interested and in what we were doing, and making known the Adrian Aqueduct that was not known. It was our primary aim when we were thinking about communication, and also because we wanted to produce something that people can relate to. It's something that to, let's say, regenerate the Adrian Aqueduct in ways that it was had something tangible. It produced something, a tangible outcome for them. Other this being the use of public space, the digital archive to learn about the history of the Adrian Aqueduct and of their neighborhood, or to utilize the water that remained unused. And by doing that in long term, because it was a long term at that stage, it was that we had to build relationship with the community, not only to inform them about what was happening, about the good project that the city delivers to them, but also to build relationships, because we had to deliver, let's say, at least two citizens bodies to co-manage the outcome, the results of the project. One was about the delivery of the management of the history, digital history, local history archive, and the other one about this network of the distribution of the water, the most kind of tangible, let's say, outcomes of this of the cultural hydrant project. So we had to build relationships, and to work together with the initial local stakeholders that we had. It was very important in order to deliver our message there. So all our narrative and storytelling was about how we can utilize an ancient heritage that we had to challenge, to do something to challenge contemporary challenges, to address contemporary challenges, and how important their participation it was. And I think their participation, it was really the key to make successful, because we had to showcase it then. It helped us showcase what we're doing. It was something that created result in other people, other cities interested in that. And in order to do that, we used from very traditional door-to-door practices, talking to local organizations, etc., to utilize to the utilization of big cultural events like the Hydrant Festival that we ran for 3 years, co-organized with the local communities, and helped us through this process, helped us build the relations. So it was not only communication, it was not only about disseminating information, about publicizing events, etc., but also doing together with them specific elements of the project. So, and this, as I said, brought us in a condition that we could showcase something that we felt that had got a value in terms of what we were doing with the people. And we started realizing the change that was happening, or how the results, the fruits that this strategy brought, when we start receiving invitations to participate in various awards, award competitions, either this be related to, urban innovation, cultural heritage innovation, governance innovation, etc. And of course, even more when we started being shortlisted in the majority of them. I think only in one or two we weren't shortlisted. And then press came in, because this gave publicity to the project. The press came in, international press firstly, and then the national press, and also universities, researchers, or even EU water authorities that wanted to visit, and learn from what we were doing. And it was very interesting because we focused in the local community, then we went to the international recognition of what we were doing, and then it was only then that actually the people in the municipality, either this being the policymakers or the staff, they start realizing that what we were doing, it was not just an added good public work in the city. Yeah, something that it was easier for the politicians to sell off, to say, oh yeah, you see, we regenerated this, we create more green spaces. But it had an added value there that related to long-term strategic decisions about water management, about participation and democracy in the city, about integrated methodologies and all that, to challenge, to address urban challenges and all that stuff. So I would stop here, and how we move from the initial strategy of communication focusing on local level to go through the international level to reach, let's say, the policy makers and the core of the decision policy of the decision processes in our city.
Thank you, Christos. Fernando, how about you?
Oh, I don't think I have enough information to talk for 3 minutes, but I will be a little more brief than Christos. But it's maybe because our experience was not as complex and wide as Halandri's one. So I think. When we look back to the beginning of our communication efforts, I must say that one of our partners in the UIA initiative was in charge of the communication activities. And they were a company that was not a company, an institution, a public institution that was really have a lot of experience and good people to implement the communication campaigns. But not only at the start of the project, but even by the time we finished it, we were convinced that communication was based on how much information we could get in front of how many people. That's it. And the strange thing that neither the communication expert partner nor the communication agency hired by them, not even us in the coordination team, ever questioned this approach. And so we aim for social media, press articles. In fact, we implemented a lot, tens, maybe 100 diffusion events through all these 4 years. And we have metrics on everything, and we put all that information in the final communication report. But we have the impression that we ended up convinced that we hadn't been able to communicate properly what the project was about. But on the other hand, we also forgot that in some other way we managed to contact and explain and earn the trust of more than 1,300 families. So I think at the end we finally communicated something to someone, but without having a clue of how we did it. And it's more or less what our approach, like trying to be trigger happy and aim from everyone without considering what not only the information we were transmitting, but the impact that we were trying to generate in all that people that we were aimed to impact. But this is something that maybe is answered in the next questions.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, well, thank you very much. Now it's time actually for the participants, the other participants to join this conversation. I would ask you to take a picture to this QR code, but I can also share the presentation from Menti, so maybe this makes it easier for you. So if some of you want to answer from directly from their personal computers. So the question is, what resonates in your minds from these two interventions? So what can you do you find yourself, do you recognize yourself in one of the two presentations? Is there any I don't know, crucial term or interesting concept that came out that I don't know, that might be interesting for you? Okay, something is starting to pop up. So I will read them, and then, of course, if you want to add something to what you wrote, just feel free to raise your hand or to take the stage. We're just 15 people, so we can do that. So someone is answering, not necessarily only focus on reaching as much people as possible, but also on who you try to reach, which this is one thing that came to my mind when Fernando was saying, I mean, we understood we somewhat reached people, but maybe one thing that was a bit missing was deciding at the beginning who you wanted to target. So sometimes the number per se is not necessarily, the key aspect, then maybe instead thinking of, how to say, the ingredients of the apple pie you want to bake can also be meaningful and relevant. Someone is complaining about hard times. Yes, it's hard times. So the initial thematic we worked on should carefully be thought out in order to catch the citizens' attention. That's important, and it makes. I mean, it ain't a no friction kind of thing. So sometimes you understand you are producing the wrong message, or your message is not impactful, or it's not generated what you had in mind. So I would say do not be worried about changing the direction and or learning from your mistakes and then reframing or redirecting the trajectory. Targeting is fundamental, but doesn't guarantee you pass the message. That's really true. That's really true. Or maybe you might be successful towards some targets and completely unable to reach some others, facing the same communication issues, simply, talking or thinking, aiming at talking to different interlocutors. Communication is not just press releases, but a whole set of actions targeting different groups of people, for sure. Too much communication. Who is saying too much communication? Why too much communication? Let us know why. Why is it too much? Because it's true. It can be too much. It can be overwhelming. It can be like producing noise instead of producing output. So if you want to add some comments on that, just take the stage.
I can respond to that. It's not my comments, but someone else's. But I do agree, because I do think often in European projects, we have this communication plan where we say you have to have X amount of posts and X amount of press releases, but we kind of forget why we're doing it. We try to reach like a quantitative number of, oh, we have to post at least this many times, but I often get the response from my communication team, and what are you trying to say here? Like, why are you saying that a group of European people came to Roeselare? Why is this relevant for a citizen? And it always resonates with me, but it's always a bit of a mismatch between the European requirements and the focus that we put sometimes on communication and things rather than the message we want to bring across. Yeah. So I do think it's something we have to think about if we do these type of projects. So I don't know who said it, but I completely agree.
I said, maybe it's a simple way of put the question, but I think in general, not only about this project, but listen, I'm not from the communication area, but we have an office in the municipality of communication, and I send information all the time. Nobody is here. Why? Because they always are publicate information all the time. Things like a lot of things. I don't know how to say it. And I think we think too much in quantity. And not so much in quality. And when you organize, for example, this, how many people are here present? Because the people don't have time, and they see the information running all the time. That's why I said that. In January, I think we have to discuss this issue with. For service, you have to. Our obligation is to appoint that also, I suppose, because in the end, it seems that we are doing communication only by an obligation. Yeah. And sometimes, I don't know, maybe the subject for the people, because they listen so many times about the subject, and maybe they don't. After a while, they don't give it the importance that the subject really has. I don't know. I think a little of it, like if I'm aware, because I'm not from the communication area, and to see. I have to deal with this question because in my municipality, with 700 employers, no one's care about this and other things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, what comes to my mind as I listen to you is there's a number of things. On the one side, this idea that quantitative communication or measuring communication in terms of quantities, it's not meaningful anymore. Maybe it could be in the past. Nowadays, that as you mentioned, I mean, we are all bombed by information every day, so it's so difficult to extract. The things that are interesting. This is one point. The other point is that possibly in the perspective of an URBACT network and of the program in general, maybe we should start asking different things from our communication plans. So not simply listing all the things we want to publish, but in a way, list the way we want to produce an impact, which resonates a lot with the comments you made, and also this is a bit implicating, I think, the fact that as it's I mean, quite often, some of you was mentioning that quite often communication is intended as homeworks. I have to do that. It's part of the paperwork that I have to produce to apply for a project, while it's part of the design of the proposal, much more than simply saying, I need to comply with that. It's not a document you just deliver and it's a copy-paste thing every time, but so we need to work more on the integration of these different aspects. A good idea is to build and create a charismatic representative figure to reach out to the public. I think we were discussing about that with the EmPowerIngUs network in the beginning, this idea of ambassadors or, reliable voices. Any other comment? Any other thing you want to add, or shall we continue to the next question? Christos.
Yeah. Just 2 comments on the response. First of all, about what we discussed about too much communication or not. I think it is also a linguistic trap here. Yeah. When we speak, what does it mean to communicate? Is it the same as just deliver, disseminate information? Because this is what we do with any kind of media. It's not. It's just. Sharing an information that doesn't mean that you communicate the message, but you don't. But the problem is how you translate this into the actual relation. Actually, you say into how you make an impact, how you motivate people. And when I say people, it's not only the local people, but let's say that we follow the EU requirements, of in each project. Okay, they say, okay, you have good communication strategy in order to reach out funders, so you have to motivate the funders. But to motivate the funder, you have to sell them something. Okay, and you cannot sell them information. You have to sell them something that's more tangible, more kind of people can feel that this is something that is happening there. It is something worth investing, worth interesting, etc. So therefore, we go back to communication in the in the most simple, direct way. Okay, it is that you have to build something concrete that you can sell. This is why for us, this is how we saw it from the beginning, and I think producing something in the local level, then we can stand on this, and say, yes, we did that, and this is, I think we have, it has a value, and it can be recognized by producing. And I agree, too much information or too much communication is not without having something concrete to showcase. I don't think it can work. So it has to be a shift in how we think about the different layers of communication, let's say, within the communication strategy, which is mostly limited, accordingly to the current requirements to, as you said, kind of quantitative terms.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other one about the heart, something very quick about how it is communication in heart, and it has to indeed it works accumulatively. It doesn't work in one go. Yeah, it doesn't bring very fast results, and it is all encompassing. You never know which trend of communication, which pathway of communication will work. Okay, so one kind of interfeeds the other level. And in Halandri, for example, even after 3 years, after we received it, even now, where there are people that they came up to this project now, only now they learn, and they say, you don't inform, you don't inform what you're doing. We are not informed, the residents,
you didn't tell us.
Halandri. Okay, so. Yeah, so don't expect easy results. Indeed, it's hard.
Okay, Agana.
There is no too much communication for me. We were presented our project to different kind, from primary school to high school students, politician, national urban forum, and you have to adapt every presentation to the public you presented, because it's a different language, but you never know where you can find some people who are interested in your project. For instance, on Festival of Science, there was another lecturer, professor from faculty, and her student heard my presentation and decided to make a final project on his faculty on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
So
you were convincing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We can continue then later on with the conversation, with the discussion. So I will move forward to the next two questions. Maybe this time I can ask Fernando to start. So the two questions are these ones. Can you recall a moment where communication in your project went beyond sharing information and actually helped you open new doors, like collaboration, follow-up actions, or funding? What happened and who made the difference? And then the other question is, which communication approaches made you feel that something really stayed in your city or even beyond? So, and at which scale did you see that most? So locally, nationally, at European level? And if you can think about that, what's the element that made it last? So Fernando first and then Christos after.
Okay, regarding this moment where the communication went beyond sharing information, maybe, okay, we always took advantage of every opportunity we find to talk about the EPLU in any form. We really enjoyed these activities, and we always take advantage of participating. And we have been participating in grant presentations, not often, but some of them were grant presentation in front of an audience and everything. But this might not every communication action that was really valuable for us were about major events. Some of them were humble communication acts or activities, like talking in community centers, in neighborhood meetings, in awareness raising workshops, and that was really. It doesn't matter how big or small is the venue, but what made the difference in all of them was that what happened after each talk. Sometimes it was 5 minutes after having a coffee with the rest of the attendees, and sometimes was 5 months later. Some resulted in a person returning to our office for more information. Sometimes was the communication of a potential partner interested in a brief online meeting, or even invitation to new events as it happened. And now we are involving in several other projects because of having attended or participating in a diffusion act. So thanks to these follow-up contacts that I have not only been able to access new projects, but also improve those projects that was already underway. So you never know how much impact you are creating until that impact answers you and gives some feedback after your pitch. And the fourth question, looking back with communication approaches that you feel that something really stuck in your city. I have a really good example, recent example, because at the beginning, I don't know if applying to an URBACT lead partner as an URBACT lead partner counts as a communication initiative, but when we decided to go into this URBACT ITN, we received 30 expressions of interest from 30 different cities, and there was every one of them was interested in what Getafe was doing. So at some point we reached those cities. Some of them are here today with us, but unfortunately I have the feeling that this saying that no one is a prophet on their own land holds true here as well, because for getting the people that is really getting the people involved that is really close to us, sometimes you have to go far away and then do something at a big scale, and then to try to say, okay, if four cities wanted to go with us through a really difficult project, why our own city is not involved with that? So this is something that take the example from outside, but the example of something that goes beyond information is when you can spot or locate the impact of your efforts. So I attended, I think last week, I attended a municipal event here in Getafe that the entire city council attended too. So it was the presentation of the Getafe Innovadora. Getafe Innovation is an initiative based on Getafe's urban agenda with a focus on innovation and considering innovation as something that has to be understood by the people of the municipality. So my intention there was to gather key concepts and ideas about the innovation that the city council endorsed. So we could use them as a foundation to convey our own concepts to the city council, politicians and staff when the time comes regarding to the EmPowerIngUs ITN. So I was really surprised to find that key ideas that we have repeated endlessly in our talks and presentations, such as the importance of cities implementing and driving social national policies, participating in projects like sowing seeds, and is key to improve as an administration, or the need to be brave, to be able to pause the daily grind and sit down and reflect, to lose the fear of making mistakes and try again. These three ideas were ours, but at some point those ideas were being voiced by our own mayors, perhaps for the first time. And it means that we've managed to introduce these narratives into political life. And that meant that a lot of the technical stuff that were there, hearing to our politicians talking about innovation, make us kind of feeling less alone in these complex projects that relies on innovation. So I think it was a really good time to look at some communications approaches that are endlessly repeated and repeated and repeated without an answer from our, in this case was our politicians, but it can happen in the same way with citizenship. You are saying, okay, energy poverty, energy efficiency, energy anything, and sometimes at some point one of those individuals that were attending our chats come back to us and say, okay, you were right, now I understand this. So it's a really injection of energy for us, for the technicians at that point. But it's also a proof that maybe some of the actions we implemented worked at some point.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Christos.
Okay. Yeah. When we felt that communication was beyond sharing information first. Yeah, I think, all this following this kind of recognition, especially international recognition of what we were doing, when EUI, when the project was brought in the attention of the EUI, and they suggested us to organize a cultural heritage policy lab in Halandri. By the end, just after the project cultural heritage project finished. So then it was the moment that we felt that. This was an opportunity for us to know more about the EUI process because we were novices in this. It was the first time that we participated in a UIA project, that we did a UIA project, and we were we didn't know, we had got a good knowledge of both the city and the people, the group that were involved in implementing cultural hydrant of the European context. So this was a moment that really we started getting to know the people, getting to know the process. We could we could navigate ourselves better in what we were and in the opportunities that existed in how to move and build further create further opportunities and resources for us to to develop other projects in the city. I think this was one thing, but also this was a result of, I would say, the key role of our UIA expert, of Chiara, that was very proactive in bringing us in contact with other cities. And this I want to share this because it is something that cities are legitimate to ask, from their expert, especially cities that participate in projects, to ask from their expert, to get to share with them information about, platforms, opportunities that can create networks and become more acquainted with the people or other cities that they do similar projects. And this is creating this link. This is where effective communication is happening, let's say, and where communication can translate into a strategy that can bring fruits in terms of funding, in terms of getting knowledge and all that stuff. And the other thing that played some role on that, for us, it was luck. Because water, suddenly, from cultural heritage, we shifted focus to water management. Okay, when water was becoming an issue, let's say in policy, in the policies of the EU. So somehow we shifted the focus of what we're doing it, and also this brought some fruit. So identifying what is the need and framing your story, your narrative, let's say, your communication narrative on this, on what actually it sells, or it is in the public discussion, let's say, it is important. And just very briefly about the approaches, I think, okay, what stayed in our this communication strategy left in our city good relationship with the local community, but also good relationship on the international level that helps us and knowledge on both sides that help us, let's say, be more convincing when we pitch ideas for projects in our policy makers. So we have to have their ratification in order to, to deliver, let's say, or to communicate what we do within the municipality. Okay, and how people within the municipality work. Okay, this is a different level of communication, and maybe it's the harder one because you deal with institutional structures. Okay, so that's it from me.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Well, I would ask you all to go back to your phones and start thinking about these next questions. So, what is interesting? What is stimulating? But it's difficult to implement. But I wanted to add a comment because in both the contributions. There is, I think, an important point to be kept in mind. That is, you both insisted on one point that there is a moment in which you have to adapt and adjust what you're doing to other narratives that are coming from other frameworks. So in the case of Fernando, that was extremely clear about the Getafe Innovadora thing. So it is extremely, I mean, it's a smart move to say, hey, let me understand what it's digested by the local debate and let me anchor to that with my reflection, with my project, with my perspective. So also in a way, this means that we need to be flexible, that we need to be capable, I would say, to smell the air. So to understand what is the direction of the debate. So and that is what instead Christos was mentioning. So there was a moment in which at European level, the debate about water took a shift, and the shift was water management, which doesn't mean that you have to change your essence or the essence of your project. Moving outside the field you imagined in the beginning, but that you have to frame what you have in mind to the existing narrative or to the existing. This is very true also when it comes to picking the right program or project you want to apply for. So keeping energy poverty or water in mind, trying to understand in which way this can be adapted or introduced into an Horizon Europe proposal or into different kind of activities or programs like, I don't know, I'm thinking of the Creative Europe programs. This is for cultural production, but this wouldn't prevent none of you to say, I want to make a proposal on the Creative Europe thing, a program that is related to energy or to water. What changes is the tool you use, the actions you perform, the activities you imagine. So this is I think this is quite a crucial point. So keeping the attention high on and I would say being rigorous in respecting the topic you have in your hands, but at the same time being flexible and smart in understanding how you can suggest or produce a conversation about that topic within existing frameworks that maybe are not the perfect framework you wanted, but are existing framework. They are real. There are people in there. There are institutions in there. There are, I don't know, also the leverages you might need, maybe they stand there. So it's that one, the place you have to stand in order to, continue feeding your action. There is a point, or there are more points. So what is interesting, stimulating, but difficult to implement? It must not create additional work for them in conveying these new messages. That's extremely important. And it also goes in this direction. So taking advantage of what you have. Maybe it's not the perfect scenario, but it is a scenario you can use. And it's a realistic scenario you can get into. They must be able to personally benefit from communicating. This goes back to what we meant before, that the message needs to be tailored to the interlocutor. And maybe it's not the fully complete message or the message in its full capacity and its full, how to say, articulation, I would say, but it's a starting point. Then the interaction between a project's communication efforts in city hall departments. Okay. This is
sorry,
in two pieces. Number
I
two.
couldn't put everything in the same comment. So the first one is the right one, and the second one is the left one.
Okay. Sorry, it took me. I had to read them through. So the interaction between project communication efforts and city hall departments must meet three conditions. Yeah, it must not conflict with or detract from the existing communication strategy, and then the 2 points we mentioned before, which goes in the direction of I would say just with a joke, but it's a bit know your enemy, I would say. So get to know who you have in front of you and get to know which might be the leverages, which might be the angles you can take to convince them or to bring them on board. Everybody's got an interest, so understanding in which way, if that interest can be compatible with what you do, is quite important. I don't know if someone is still typing or if we can move on with the next question. There will be another interactive session later on. Maybe we can continue. So we go back again to Christos and Fernando with the last two questions. So let me just, okay. Today, in your work with the municipality, do you feel that did any of your communication efforts actually help change the way things are done? For example, in policies, in institutional practices, or in political priorities? If yes, how? And if not, can you explain why? So is there any change that was produced in the everyday practice at local level? It can be within the municipality, but maybe it can be outside the municipality. And then the last question is if you had the time machine and you could go back to the start of your UIA project, what would you do differently, if anything? Maybe everything was perfect. I don't know. As you like it, I don't know. Christos again.
Okay. Yeah, it is hard to tell if something has changed, really, because operational institutional changes are very hard to achieve. Yeah, it takes time, and also they need, more orchestrated procedures. And it's not easy to say to someone, yeah, don't do these things this way and do it another way. But what I believe that we have managed through the Cultural Hydrant project, but especially through the URBACT, the ULG, the URBACT local group, that we involved, city departments in the ULG. It is that we have started maturing. First of all, we have put. It was easier. We have put the need for something to change and follow a different working habits, let's say, or different policy making habits, like more integrated approaches, more participatory methods. So they start realizing the need to do so, and this is what we are working on, and also to mature this process for this need to be. Let's say, to materialize into different working methods. And this is what we do through these are our main kind of aim of a continuity plan. And it is, and I think it is, you can see that other people that, because we are not public sector workers. Okay, we're contracted only for the project, but there are other people as us around the municipality that also they're more keen, to follow this role. And we have started now in the new European projects that we run to establish this kind of more collaborative working groups and process in the municipality, and create this, making the change by doing things different, let's say, without planning them, without saying them, okay, this is, the roadmap to change, blah, blah, and all that stuff, while we do both, let's say. And so I see that it is, it is easier now to talk about the change that needs to be, and to work towards it, rather than before. This is the impact, I think, that we have managed. And the other thing, what we would do different, I don't know if something, I don't know. I cannot tell again, but I can tell that one big challenge it is in terms of communication when it is related to participatory processes, especially towards, on the local level communication. It is that it is the challenge of pace, of different tempos between participation and between not the delivery of the actual of the works, but especially the kind of work. So if you have to do construction works, for example, okay, you cannot have the participation after the studies for implementation. And creating interest before, it is difficult because people start discussing about this when they see the machines going out and someone digging in their area. So only then they start kind of getting interested in what is happening, etc. So this is a challenge that something that someone has to deal with. But I think that building up, processes of participation and networks of communication in the city, again, through an accumulative procedural kind of way, it can bring you in a better condition to mobilize key actors in the communities before, so you have better connections with the community so you can get the information that you need, or you can pass the information that you want, before, in order to establish a closer connection, more synchronized, let's say, between participation and the communication in big urban projects. And of course, the other thing that now we are in better position and that we could do differently, it is that because we have this experience, we feel more comfortable, or we know something more about how to navigate ourselves or orientate our kind of communication strategy towards, for example, towards securing funding, getting in contact with potential funders, or getting where to pitch for some ideas for a project, and things like that. This we didn't know when we hadn't got this in our baggages, when we started, especially the cultural hydrant project. Yeah, as I said, we were very new to this to this terrain.
Okay, thank you. Fernando. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
And I was saying, oh, sorry, and I was already mute, but sorry again. As Christos was pointing, I think operationally, there's certainly a continuity in terms of activities, strategies, and methodologies that are now inside the municipality. Some concepts have materialized into new calls for renovation, grants, or urban development strategies. Others have simply served as breeding ground to facilitate addressing other initiatives, other projects, or fields of study. But when it comes to understand the narrative, the impact we got in the municipalities is much less evident. We suppose that there's a trace, maybe a simplified narrative that of everything we wanted to communicate is still there in the municipality and in the people. But now for example, talking about energy poverty carries less stigma that it did in 2019. And now we are more able to discuss about energy efficiency, shared energy, citizen empowerment, and most of the people feel, and we are glad to, we think that this is felt by the rest of the citizenship, that those concepts that were really strange 5 years ago, they are no longer seen as something foreign, neither to politicians, nor to civil servants, or even the citizens. So, okay, yes, we have made a change in the municipality, but maybe it's not so linked with the communication we develop for reaching that that change. So we have still a lot more to learn. And if I had the time machine, and if I could go back to the start of the UIA, firstly I say I would be glad to attend the storytelling workshops that Sandra and Brian masterly conducted last year. That was really a game change for us to focus not in the information but in the people that was getting that information. But in terms of communication, I will have had a really very short and specific meeting with our mayors to ask her one question. Are you clear on what you are going to say about the EPLU project in Europe if it goes well? Because we never thought about it. We spent a lot of time worrying about how to justify what wasn't going so well, and what was uncompleted or misunderstood and everything. And that's because when we were named as best practice from URBACT, it took us quite a little to figure out what to say. And it's something that you have to bear in mind at the beginning, that maybe things end well, and you have to have a narrative and a communication line or strategy to say, okay, we succeeded in this because of whatever. But we have to consider that, and we didn't thought about it in the correct time. And if you think if you imagine that your project is going to be successful, it's really easy for you to talk about the project through all the process, not only at the end with the success is a fact. So it's a way of changing your mind. It's like something that when you are talking to your child about what are we going to do this evening in the park, then you are taking his mind to the park at that point. So it changed your mood. It changed your way of understand things and problems, because you know that at the end of the road there's a success waiting for you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So the final interaction I am asking you, sorry, is this final question that is about what can be adopted and adapted in this sense. So you heard Christos and Fernando talking about, you know, many things that happened to them as long as they were delivering both practices, so the EUI initiative and then the network after that. Is there anything from the point of view of operational things that is inspiring you, that you said, hey, I could do this. I feel I am in the condition of, you know, being able to do this tomorrow, this afternoon, in the next project. So is there anything that is inspiring you, that could inspire you, and that you would bring home after this conversation? To take a minute to think about it and type it in the answer. Well, by the way, one thing that was emerging from these last two answers from both sides, I would say, both from Spain and from Greece, is that probably one aspect we never take care enough is the relationship with the municipality, which is not a stone. I mean, the municipality is made of different people, different departments, different sensibilities on things. There are the politicians, there are the technicians, there are the innovators, there are the conservatives. So in a way, we possibly never take care enough of this aspects of, promoting the project within the municipality first, or also within the municipality, and bringing the municipality and the technicians on board. Come on, type, so we can conclude on this. We want to hear your voices. Someone is... okay, this is a video. Okay. You're muted, Fernando.
This is the workshop of storytelling. That is, it should be mandatory for everyone.
Okay.
In every project.
This is a valuable resource for sure for everybody. Thank you so much. Any comment from the cities in both networks? Okay, what can be adopted and adapted? Someone is saying related with politicians. I'm just asking how. So if you want to take the stage, because this is quite general, quite broad. So what of the way in which Christos and Fernando were describing on how they are relating with politicians is inspiring you, or do you think it was igniting something in your mind saying, hey, I could do this? No answer? Well, Fernando, what you mentioned about convincing the mayor before starting everything, that's quite interesting because there is maybe something we do not consider every time we apply to a new project. I mean, this is normally a technical thing. It's spotting the right application and then wanting to answer to that. And of course, you have a perspective that is the perspective of your position within, the city life and the departments and the technical. And actually, we tend to. I mean, I do it myself when I am applying for something. We tend to forget about the political framework where we are embedded when we do these sort of things. We say, hey, you have to value that because it's a valuable application, and maybe we don't care about, or we are not informed, or we don't mind, or we don't take care of understanding in which way what we plan to do can match larger political frameworks, which is actually the language of the mayor. So that's, I think, is extremely important. I would say in the very initial phase, so really asking yourself, okay, how could this be welcomed by politicians, or how could a politician adopt this narrative and make it, own it and use it?
I think we were focusing in giving the politician information so they can use that information for their purposes. But that is not the best way to do it, because what the politicians are interested in is, how can I sell your idea, your project, your idea? So you have to make the effort to change, not trying to train them in the project. It's to use the project for something. So you have to play that role of being a politician too. But I think is the way the politicians are involved in the projects. They are really interested in the outcome, not in the process. Us as technicians are more interested in the process, but because it's where we get our reputation or our value from. So we have to make that leap and try to put the food in the table for them, and be as easy, adapted, and useful for them as possible, because they are not interested in learning. They have only 4 years to do things. They are not interested in learning what these 4 years of things are for, because when those 4 years are finished, they are not in the house anymore. So it's like being politician too at some point.
Yeah, we probably need to act more politically ourselves, or at least put ourselves in the shoes of the politician that is governing the city at that moment. That's which it may be not easy because we are not politicians ourselves, so we are technicians. So that's, but I was having a look at one of the comments that says mayors and politicians in general make our life harder due to their lack of goodwill and trust in what we do. We should be more assertive in persuading them of the legitimacy of our project. This can be one way, being assertive. On the other side, I would say you were all making extremely interesting exercises in listening to people, to the local systems of stakeholder. We never frame politicians as someone we should listen to. Likewise, I would say on an equivalent basis, okay, they are not more important than others that we need to listen to, but cities are complex animals, I would say. And in order to have to get things done and to produce the impact you want to produce, at some point you need politicians. So introducing in your perspective, in your operational perspective, also the role they can have, knowing that they can move mountains if they want, if they recognize an interest in what you are proposing to them. So I think that it is difficult. I perfectly understand the conflictual perspective that lies within this comment. Also because technicians stay and politicians go away. But at the same time, you cannot operate as if they were not there, because that's how cities work. So that's a good point, I think, for further reflection. Christos and then Bo.
Yeah, what I want to tell is exactly relates to who stays and who leaves. Okay. Because I agree with this, and this is why I think the political impact that you can have, it is by aiming to more structural changes within the operability of the everyday work of the municipality. Because you have to exploit this uninterest of the politicians in that. Okay, because the politicians, they judge according to results. They want to see results that they can showcase. They say, "Oh, I did this for the city and that for the city, etc." Of course, it would be, it would be kind of very welcome, if you have politicians that they are interested in that phase, or at least they don't put you obstacles. In Halandri, this is the situation that we have. They don't. They're not interested in what we say so much about, integrated approaches, participatory things, such. But they're positive on that, but they're not interested in seeing what does this mean for their role and their tasks and what they do. So, but they leave us, space, to do so, and they're supported in that on that level. And so political impact can be done by actually how things are, to pave out, different way of that things can be done, and slowly to create the frameworks that politicians will be asked to, let's say, the next generation will be the next ones that they come in to fight something that they have to adapt to, because the city is how it works. Okay. I would see this. I would see it in this way, which is exactly your aim is different, and what you sell as your aim is different. Is it different from what you sell as your aim, or from the actual result? And also, I think the difficulty for us, what we feel in Halandri, it is that we have built, we ran a project, Cultural Hydrant, that was very successful, that opened doors, and now we're in two DUT projects, one live, one EUI, etc. This is something that politicians value, but at the same time, as Fernando wrote about, you don't put extra work to the staff, let's say, they don't, also politicians, they feel it, or they're not ready to utilize these open doors and change and be more kind of comfortable, or take the political, let's say, the political initiative to say, yeah, look, this is a way that things can be done differently. I'm saying this because in Greece, the situation is not bad in terms of funding, in terms of policy and institutional restrictions, but it is a way that you can do things, that work in a kind of more just, more socially just, more environmentally way, and things still. But it's a political responsibility that sometimes politicians don't want to take on and be in the front line, let's say. It's something extra that you ask them to do, and this where, political will comes again, or the limitations of the political will.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know, there was a hand up by Bo before. I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised by the difficulty you have with politicians when it comes to communication, because for me, that's when we start a project, that's usually what they are mainly focused on, our politicians, the communication aspect. I don't really feel that much resistance. And we try to start from what their policy goals are and what their priorities are, and then just build on that, start with something they want to do and then just try to make it stronger and add on different policy teams or make it more integrated. But I don't feel like we necessarily have that much resistance from our politicians. And maybe it's because we are a relatively small municipality, I don't know, but we have one-on-one conversations with our politicians. They are on the same floor in the building as me. Their office doors are open, so I kind of walk in and talk to them about it. Maybe it's also about finding connections and not necessarily seeing them as the enemy. Because they help with a lot of the communication elements as well, and they help translate a lot of what we're doing to the citizens, and it gives them money to do things that they would otherwise not be able to do. So it also, traveling with them to other countries usually helps to build connections. So try and take them to partner meetings.
So bring them to trips.
Yes, but the informal part of having a trip and to travel somewhere, and then they see what the project is about and learn about it and want to spread the word more when they come back as well. I know you don't want to sell them on the trip, but it does help to build the connection with the politicians sometimes, and to see each other as people, and having, whilst you're sitting on a plane, you have a moment to talk about these things in the margin of the project. And so maybe it's worth trying to also sell the other upsides of the project to them as well.
Thank you. Fernando.
And
are there
one question?
Sorry.
No, Benjamin, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, are there any European funds for promoting trips, informal trips with our mayors?
Well, you could do city-to-city exchanges.
Yeah, that's what I had in mind. The city-to-city exchanges. These are super easy to be organized. So they are I think that I never did one myself, but it's really, I think, a little amount of paperwork. Let's say.
Yeah, it's
just
like
have
a
to
form you fill in.
Yeah,
it's basically a one-page form, and then they give one of the cities, they give them staff money, and the other city gets travel funds, and they now increased the money. So we did one about 2 months ago with Rotterdam. They came here and our city went there, and you get about 5,000 euros each for organizing that. And it's quite helpful to see things in practice, to also have that informal contact. So definitely recommend that program. It's really easy, and
so there is no limitation. I think you can apply for more than one if you want. Of course, maybe not with the same city, but and it's also very much, I would say, thematically oriented. So you can say, okay, I want to visit Halandri because of the water. Or I want to, deepen my knowledge of the Halandri case because I would like to do something similar. But before applying for, an URBACT network or so, I want to get in contact and more in depth. So that's and I think that it took time to have it really working, but now I think there are many cities that are applying for that.
Yeah, and there's also the peer review. Sorry. There's also the peer reviews by Interreg Europe as well, not just EUI. Interreg Europe does it as well, and they're also quite like low-level applications where they can exchange expertise. So that's also an option.
One question, but how much time you in Roeselare has been involved in European projects?
How much time?
For how long? When you started this?
I started 5 years, well, a little over 5 years ago, and then before that it was a bit more ad hoc. So I do like a full time on European projects for 5 years now.
No, but I mean your city.
Yeah, they hired me to find European projects, so it's about the same.
I thought
it's about the same time.
So we are similar in maturity. I mean, but we should expect something that you have reached with your politicians in these 5-6 years time that we are finishing now. But for example, what you were talking about, taking your mayor to a trip to feel the fabric of the projects. We were invited last year to the Covenant of Mayors, and we had to push really hard to our mayors to go to the European Council and speak before Ms. von der Leyen. And it's something that for a politician is really is good, but she was afraid of a lot of things that wasn't related to the project, nor the topic, not the European Commission, everything. So from even if you have the money, the budget to take your politicians abroad, some of them are afraid of losing the safety space inside the municipality. So not every mayor is able to go abroad and make a pitch in front of people from other countries.
No, I completely agree. But I noticed that it works if you take 2 or 3 that are willing, and then they brag to their colleagues that they went, and then the other ones want to go as well. So it kind of works because they encourage each other. And one of them, for example, really didn't want to, and then he met the politician from Portugal, from Serpa, and because he came to Roeselare for a partner meeting, and they had drinks together at the lunch break, and then the next time he was willing to come to the next meeting. So sometimes it's also about meeting their peers in like an informal setting. If you have international people in your city, could be a good starting point for them. And then now that person, he encourages everyone else to go on these partner meetings as well, even though beforehand he's a local farmer that got into politics, so he was not very open to
not a cosmopolitan man. Yeah, but I would say the same could also be imagined for, I mean, we tried it, we had an experience on this here in Torino. The same could be said for public officers, for, I don't know, the departments directors, or, you know, for people that are embedded in the everyday technical life of the city. It's difficult in many cases. We are all very busy, but we saw this really as an advancement in terms of, then of course this makes your life much easier after that, because especially if it is related to some departments that are embedded in what you do, or that have a say, or that can have an influence, bringing them on board might also mean really bringing them on board of the plane that is bringing you in a specific project meeting. So that's I think quite a good point. And also, again, this brings back to the city to city or to the peer reviews, to this idea that in order to have this level of commitments, this level of commitment needs to be fed, needs to be generated, needs to be produced, and it's the I would say the premise is the what comes before the production of an application, the establishment of a network. I mean, of course, this comes from technicians, but there should be different levels in which this is, you know, generating. It's a way to produce a long-term accountability and viability and trust. Some of you before said that they do not trust us. It's a way to build trust. somehow not the only one, but it's one way to build trust.
To trigger a sparkle, as we would say.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, we actually ran out of time, so I don't want to occupy your agenda more than this. Sonia has to go, and we agreed that everything should be finished around 20 minutes ago. I would like to thank you so much. It was an extremely interesting conversation from my side. I will produce, as I mentioned, I will share with you the recording and the report and the findings. And I would say, of course, this conversation is still open. So if something comes to your mind, just drop a line, or if there are extra comments that will be switched on by receiving the report. This is a hot topic, so we might continue discussing on this. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Same from us. So thank you very much. Thank you our partners in the Empowering Us for having take this couple of hours to share their impressions, and thank you to Halandri and it's their outstanding project that I think we should keep in touch, because there's something.
Yeah, definitely. All of us.
Each time we go together in something, there's a lot of things to share. So keep in touch, please.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.